Good morning, students. In this section, we are going to see Economics Lesson 2, that is Globalization and Trade. Students, before entering into the lesson, please note down all the points which is presented in this video. Then only you can revise and understand the continuity of the lesson. It will also help you to revise during the time of examination. So first, what is globalization? Globalization in its literal sense is the process of transformation of local phenomenon into global ones. A process by which the people of the world are unified into a single society and function together. So nowadays the main issues in the world is about coronavirus. Okay, so for the treatment of coronavirus, many countries try to identify the vaccine for the treatment of corona. So many countries were tried and get a success for the treatment of coronavirus. Now it is spread all over the world for the treatment of coronavirus. So globalization is the integration of a country with the world economy. Basically, globalization signifies a process of internationalization plus liberalization. So worldwide economical, political and cultural exchange of ideas. So globalization is exchange of ideas between the countries for the improvement of other countries. Describes how world is becoming economically and politically one. The economic aspects of globalization include trade, investment and migration across the countries. Globalization believes that human beings should have greater access to vast number of goods. So the instruments, though including in the globalization, is technology, multinational companies, lower tariffs, improved transport, labor mobility and capital mobility. Next, history of globalization. The term of globalization was introduced by Theodore Levitt. The historical background of globalization can be discussed on three stages. What are the three stages means? The first stage is archaic globalization. The stage 2 is proto-globalization and stage 3 is modern globalization. Archaic means, in the word itself you can understand, archaeology means the prehistoric period or historic period. So globalization, the previous period of globalization is called archaic globalization. The period between the previous and nowadays, the in-between period is called proto-globalization, and modern globalization is nowadays period. First, archaic globalization. A early form of globalized economies and culture known as archaic globalization. The first form of globalization is known as archaic globalization. It existed during the Hellenistic age. What does Hellenistic age means? The period from the death of Alexander the Great in 323 BC to the middle of the 1st century BC. So the period between the 323 BC to the middle of the 1st century BC. That period is called Hellenistic age. It was marked by Greek and Macedonian emigration to areas conquered by Alexander and by the spread of Greek civilization from Greece to northern India. So, the Hellenistic age was marked by Greek and Macedonian emigration to areas conquered by Alexander and by the spread of Greek civilization from Greece to northern India. During the archaic globalization period, commercialized urban centers were focused around the axis of green culture over a wide range of stretched from India to Spain, with such cities as Alexandria, Athens and Antioch and its center. So during this period, the main aim is commercialized urban centers were focused around the axis of green culture over a wide range that stretched from India to Spain. Trade was widespread during that period. It is the first time the idea of a cosmopolitan culture. Cosmopolitan is a Greek word Cosmopolis means world city. So this commercial link, the trade link, was developed by the inspired of the Silk Road. So the increasing proper and organized commercial links between these powers inspired the development of the Silk Road, which started in Western China, reached the boundaries of Parthian Empire and continued onwards towards Rome. So this route is called a Silk Route. So this is an inspiration for the development of this commercial link. It is started in Western China and reached the boundaries of Parthian Empire and continued onwards to Rome. The Islamic age was also an important early stage of globalization. So the globalization also improved in the age of Islamic period. So the advent of the Mongol Empire, though destabilizing to the commercial centers of the Middle East and China, greatly facilitated travel along the Silk Road. So Silk Road plays an important role for the development of archaic globalization. So these pre-modern phase of global exchange are sometimes known as archaic globalization. So this archaic globalization is the basic thing for the globalization in the world. So the next stage of globalization is proto-globalization. Proto-globalization is the period between the archaic globalization and modern globalization. It was characterized by the rise of maritime European empires. So European empires includes Portuguese, Spanish, Dutch and British empires in the 16th and 17th centuries. So this proto-globalization or early modern globalization is a period roughly between 1600 to 1800. It distinguishes itself modern on the basis of expansion, method of managing global trade and the level of information exchange. So in this proto-globalization, the information is exchanged between the European countries and also the trade occurs in between the European countries. This proto-globalization was characterized by the rise of maritime European empires. So it was started by the European Empire. In 16th and 17th century, it developed further when chartered companies like British East India Company and Dutch East India Company were established. So during the period of proto-globalization only, the British East India Company and Dutch East India Company were established. So in the 17th century, globalization became private business. So in proto-globalization became private business. Phenomenon like British East India Company, Dutch East India Company. So this East India Company we very well known about. So this British East India Company were ruled our country about 200 years. In 16th century, Portuguese started establishing trading post factories from Asia and Brazil. In the beginning, British East India Company were started to trade in our country only, but later on they started to interference in our official things. So to protect their trade and territories, British officials hired Indian soldiers called Sipais. So to protect their own trade, to protect their East India Company and territories, these British officials used our soldiers who were called as Sipais. The next stage of globalization is modern globalization. The contemporary process of globalization likely occurred around the middle of the 19th century as increased capital and labor mobility coupled with decreased transport costs led to a smaller world. So nowadays we follow the modern globalization. Between the globalization in the 19th and in the 20th century, there are significant differences. In modern globalization, industrialization allowed cheap production of household items using economies of scale, while rapid population growth created sustained demand for commodities. So nowadays, industrialization improved. So that is called modern globalization. There are two main points on which the differences can be seen. One point is the global trade in this centuries as well as the capital, investment and the economy. The global trade in the 20th century shows a higher share of trade in merchant production, a growth of the trade in services and the rise of production and the trade by multinational firms. Next, trade and traders in South India historical perspective. Southern Indian trade guilds were formed by merchants in order to organize and expand their trading activities. Trade guilds became channels through which Indian culture was exported to other lands. So our Indian cultures was spread all over the world with the help of this trade. From the 11th century to the 13th century, South Indian trade in Southeast Asia was dominated by the Cholas. So the Cholas trading techniques was dominated in South Indian trade between 11th century to the 13th century. So with the help of the trade only, our cultures was spread all over the world. Early traders. In the year 1053 AD, the Kalinga traders brought red-colored stone decorative objects for trade and also cotton textile to Southeast Asia at an early date. Next, European traders. This was due to the trading activities of the various European companies which came to India during this period. The European traders were established by the trading activities of the various European companies which came to India during this period. The discovery of a new all-sea route from Europe to India via Cape of Good Hope by Vasco da Gama had reaching repercussions on the civilized world. The Portuguese under the leadership of Vasco da Gama landed at Calicut on May 1498. The profit of goods brought by the Vasco da Gama to Portugal were to 60 times cost of the entire expedition to India. The second trip of Vasco da Gama in 1502 led to the establishment of trading station at Calicut, Cochin and Kannur. Cochin was the early capital of the Portuguese in India. So, on May 1498, under the leadership of Vasco da Gama, the Portuguese were landed at Calicut. They earned a profit of goods nearly 60 times higher than the entire expedition to India. So, they planned to establish the trading station in India. So, they established the trading station at Calicut. So, Cochin was the early capital of the Portuguese in India. Vasco da Gama returned to Lisbon in October 1503 with 13 of his ships and approximately 1,700 tons of spices, that is around the same amount of imported from the Middle East at the end of the 15th century by Venice. Portuguese profit margins from this trade were much larger than those of Venetians. A major part of the spices was sold in Europe via Antwerp, the major harbour of the Spanish Netherlands, then the most important European harbour. Next, the Dutch. Dutch undertook several voyages from 1596 and formed the Dutch East India Company in 1602. In 1605, Admiral Van der Hagen established Dutch factory at Musilipatnam and Petchapoli, Devanampattinam. In 1610, upon negotiating with the king of Chandragiri, found another factory at Pulicat. Other commodities exported by the Dutch were indigo and Bengal raw silk. Pulicat was the headquarters of the Dutch in India. Next, English East India Company. On December 31st, 1600, Queen Elizabeth I formally granted rights to the East India Company to trade in India. On the southeastern coast, the English established at Masulipatanam in 1611 and near Pulicat in 1626. The Sultan of Golconda granted the English the Golden Fireman in 1632, by which they were allowed to trade freely in their kingdom. In 1639, built a fortified factory in Madras which known as Fort St. George, which soon replaced Masulipatanam as headquarters of the English settlement on the Coromandel coast. During the period of East India Company, over 250 years change from the trading outfit to a colonial power was dissolved in 1858 and India came under direct British rule. And our country was owned by wealthy merchants and aristocrats. Government retained indirect control. By 1630s, focused on trade in Indian textiles and Chinese tea. So by 1630s, this British focused on trade in Indian textiles and Chinese teas. Next, the Danes. The Danes formed an East India Company in India in 1616. The Danish settlements were established at Tranquebar in 1620, the headquarters of Danes in India. They failed to strengthen themselves in India. In 1845, were forced to sell all the India settlements to the British. Next, the French. The first French factory in India was established in 1668 by obtaining permission from the Sultan of Golconda. In 1693, the Dutch captured Pondicherry but was handed back to the French. In 1701, Pondicherry was the headquarters of the French. Next, globalization in India. In India, the period after 1980 and 81 was marked by the severe balance of payment difficulties, mainly due to a hike in oil price and Gulf War in 1990 to 91 and hostilities in West Asia. When the new government took over in June 1991, India had unprecedented balance of payment crisis. With the downgrading of India's credit rating by some international agencies, there was heavy flight of capital out of India. Since India lost its credit worthiness in the international market, the government mortgaged 40 tons of gold to the Bank of England. Under these circumstances, the government for 1991 and 92 presented its budget in July 1991 with a series of policy changes which underlined globalization, liberalization and privatization. This has come to be called as India's new economic policy. These policies were strengthened when India signed the Dunkel Draft in 1994. So during this period, India faced a worth capital difficulties. So the government of India mortgaged 40 tons of gold to the Bank of England and get the money to run the government. The reasons for balance of payment crisis: too much foreign borrowing and improper fiscal discipline. So our country borrowed too much of foreign currencies. Next, opening of trade barriers. Political instabilities, low confidence of international business community. The economic crises between 1991 and 1992. The external debt, that is $83 billion. Foreign exchange reserves $1.2 billion. The growth of rate is 5.49%. So these are the economic crises between 1991 and 1992. So to run the government, our country introduced new economic policy. What is new economic policy means? The reforms made to adopt globalization, that is, the new economic policy is abolition of industrial licensing, expecting for a few industries. So, they cancel the license of many industries. Reduction in the number of industries reserved for public sector. So, the number of industries were reduced which were in public sector. Only the private sector industries were run. Fixation of a realistic exchange rate of rupee to exchange export of Indian goods. Foreign private sector by making rupee convertible on trade on current account and by reducing import duties. Foreign exchanges regulations were suitably amended. The statutory liquidity ratio was reduced to increase lending by RBI. So these are the reforms of new economic policy in India. Next is multinational corporations. Multinational corporation is a corporate organization which owns or controls production of goods or services in at least one country other than its home country. So multinational corporation means a corporate will establishing their branches in some other countries. That is called multinational corporation. Evolution of MNC. Like the East India Company, which came as a trading company and then became politically dominant, these multinationals first start their activities in extractive industries or control raw materials in the host countries during 1920s and then slowly enter into the manufacturing and service sectors after 1950s. So, like East India Company, so the British were entered into our country for trading only. Then they take our government. Likewise, this MNC also first entered to control the raw materials which is used for their countries. Then slowly entered into the manufacturing and service sector. Most of the MNCs at present belong to the four major exporting countries, that is USA, UK, France, Germany. 11 of the 15 largest multinationals are Americans. So, the rise of the multinational corporation. The reason to go global is more raw materials, new market, minimize cost of production. So, these are the three main reasons to establish the companies in some other countries. Next, growth of MNCs in India. A common form of MNC participation in Indian industry is through entering into cooperation with Indian industrialists. Trends of liberalization in the 1980s gave a sustained spurt to foreign collaborations. This would be clear from the fact that of the total 12,760 foreign collaboration agreements signed between 1948 to 1988. As a result of liberalized foreign investment policy announced in July-August 1991, there is a further sprout of foreign collaborations and increased flow of foreign direct investment. Why this MNC preferred to establish their industries in India means because of the huge market growth in India. This FDI policies means foreign investment policy. So our country allowed foreign countries to investment in our country. Next, fast growing economy and liberalization. So these are the main reasons for establishing their countries in our country. Next, reasons for the growth MNC. Expansion of market territory. As the operations of large size firm expand, it seeks more and more extension of it activates beyond the physical boundaries of the country in which it is incorporated. So, the reason for the growth of MNC is expansion their market. So, as to spread their market or to spread their product all over the world. So, these are the main reason. This is the main reason for establishing their country in some other country. Next is marketing superiorities. Enjoying marketing superiorities over the national firms. It enjoys market reputation, faces less difficulty in selling its product, and it's adopt more effective advertising and sale promotion techniques. So marketing superiorities. So in some countries they face less difficulties in selling its product and also adopt more effective advertising and sales promotion techniques. The next reason is financial superiorities. It has financial resource and high level of fund utilization. It has easier access of external capital markets. Its international reputation enables it to raise more international resource. The next reason is technological superiorities. Underdeveloped countries encourage MNCs to participate in their industrial development because of the technological superiorities which these firms possess as compared to national companies. So, because of the improved technologies, many countries approved their market to establish in their country. Next is product innovations. MNCs have research and development engaged in the task of developing new products and superior designs of existing products. For example, many food items have new tastes and new things which is present in the product. So that product will be sold easily in some other countries. So it is the main reason for the growth of MNC in many countries. So here some Indian multinational companies are Hero MotoCorp, Bajaj, TVS, State Bank of India and Bharti Airtel. The countries which is present in this company is Colombia, Bangladesh, Africa. So these are the countries which our industries were present. Top 10 largest multinational companies in India are Sony, Hewlett Packard, Tata Group, Microsoft Corporation and IBM. Next, advantages of MNC. Producing the same quality of goods at lower cost and without transaction cost. So, the same quality of goods was prepared by lower cost. So, this is one of the advantage of MNC. MNC reduce prices and increase the purchasing power of consumers worldwide. And MNC is able to take advantage of tax variation. Then spurring job growth in the local economies. So, establishing of many countries provide job opportunities to the peoples. So, these are the advantage of establishing MNC. Then, disadvantages of MNC. There are a way for the corporation to develop a monopoly for certain products. So, many companies were suppress the other companies to take over the small companies. There are also detrimental effects on the environment. The introduction of MNC into a host country economy may lead to the downfall of smaller and local business. So this multinational companies suppress the smaller and local business. MNC breach ethical standards, accusing them of evading ethical laws and leveraging their business agenda with capital. So some of the MNC will not follow the rules which is adopted by our country, and they solve the problems by giving money to the government. Okay students, I hope you all understood this portion. Here I gave some evaluation. Try to answer this question. Define globalization. Write about history of globalization. Write the advantages and disadvantages of MNC. Write a short note about Silk Road. Thank you.